Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Joint Archives Board, which will be hosted this afternoon on Teams. So thank you all for joining. Moving on to item 1 of the agenda. Apologies, please.
We've received no apologies.
Thank you very much, Josh. Josh, can I ask you just to send me over the chairman's notes again? I'm just trying to find them at the top of my mailbox.
Yeah, I'll just get those over to you.
Thank you. Apologies for this, everyone. The IT is letting us down slightly, but
Okay, I've just
okay.
so
So
they should have them any second.
It's just gone there. Apologies, everyone, for that. Moving on to item 2, which is declarations of interest. Not been pre-notified only, but if anyone does have any declarations through the course of the meeting, please let them know at the relevant point. Moving on to item 3 of the agenda, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. Is there any comments on those minutes based on the accuracy and record of the meeting? No. I just need a bit of clarification on this because Democratic Services tells me, are we still going to propose and second them even though we are on an online meeting and unable to vote? How is that going to work, or shall we take them to the next meeting for formal approval?
No, we can confirm them here as we would in an in-person meeting.
Perfect. Okay, well, in that case, I'm happy to propose. Is there a seconder? Or can I just pick somebody?
I'm happy to second if no one else is.
I think a few of us put our hands up, but didn't actually speak.
Well, I think we've just lost Councillor Hope there. I don't think he's in the meeting anymore.
Oh.
Sorry about that. I dropped out. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah. So sorry, I was
Yes.
just handing over to Sam now for item 6, and I think that's at the point I got cut out. So over to you, Sam.
Thank you, Chair. Relatively short report, just the one for this meeting, largely because the budget position from the two councils has not changed, so that the budget proposal that was recommended at the 5th of November meeting still stands. So this is really just to run through that, just to confirm that information and to update the board on the recent activities of the Joint Archives Service. So just under section 1 there, just to confirm to everybody what was actually agreed at the last meeting. The table there, hopefully that's reasonably clear for everybody. And the 5th column along, the proposed increase in contribution, which is actually around 2.29% of those figures there from each of the two funding councils, a total of £14,555, which will take the total contributions for next year, that's 26-27, to 649,402 for the full service. As you might recall, the budget that doesn't actually cover the full costs of running the service as it currently is. So what we've been able to achieve through a new agreement with Ancestry, which we're hoping to sign very shortly, is an uplift in our income from that source, from the online genealogical provision, and a small saving we've made in one of the staff here who's dropped down to 3 days a week. So that's how we've covered the gap, if you like. Under 1.3, I just wanted to make the point that unfortunately there's been a fair degree of attrition on our repairs and maintenance budget. There's been quite a heavy draw on that, so that the reserve that the service has, which is around £55,000 at the last meeting, is looking like it's by end of year, it's projected to be no more than about £22,000. We've had about 34,000 spend or draw down on that reserve due to the costs associated with maintaining the building, essentially. Unfortunately, that £50,000 was part of our match funding to for the lottery application, which I'll come on to in a minute. We think, be able to make it up from other sources, but it's just perhaps an indication of the cost of maintaining this building, which is fairly substantial and isn't always uniform in terms of the spend due to things requiring sometimes repair at short notice. So that's the budget. That's the budget position of 26-27 as recommended, and will hopefully be confirmed when the councils approve their own budgets later this year. One of the things to quickly mention is that the ancestry provision that I mentioned that we're just about to start work on will lead, fortunately, to the provision of free ancestry access to within the 2 library services of BCP and Dorset councils, which equates to about £20,000 per annum saving, about 10,000 to each council. So hope that's been an additional benefit of us doing this project. That will also apply for the 10 years of the contract. So that's an ongoing sort of compound saving over time. Moving on to section 2, this is really just an update for you on the various pieces of work that we're doing here within the service. The big question mark for us is around our application to the National Lottery Heritage Fund, which I think, I'm sure you're aware, we talked about at the last meeting. We were just on the point of submission then. We have now submitted. We submitted for the 12th of November deadline, and we're waiting to hear back in around about 4 weeks' time. In fact, 4 weeks tomorrow, the committee meets, and we will know later that week on the Friday, I believe, the result of our application. The total request of lottery for the 2 stages, of the bid, you might remember there's a development phase and then a delivery phase. It's about £600,000 for the development phase that we've requested, and 3.8 million for the delivery phase. The delivery phase being the part where we actually undertake capital works. That's the new repository building and so on. So total project, the total project cost is £4.7 million overall. So fingers crossed for that decision from lottery. Clearly there are implications for the service in either way. If the project is approved, when we've got a 5-year undertaking on our hands, which we very much looking forward to delivering, if that's the case. If it's a negative response, clearly we need to understand what sort of view they took within the committee, and whether there's any point in us going back for another submission. In other words, what kind of feedback we receive will be critical. But I hope it doesn't come to that, obviously. Subject, of course, to that, our service delivery plan, which this is the last sort of iteration, will need rewriting and reviewing, consequent on that decision and a range of other things that we're doing. So next time this board meets, there'll be a new service development plan with all of that information included within it. I mentioned ancestry under section 4 just to say that it's been a lengthy process to get us to this point, but we feel fairly positive now that we're in a good position to move forward. We've had positive responses from about 70% of the Dorset parishes whose records we hold, seeking permission to undertake additional digitisation. Ancestry have been to the History Centre. We've identified a space where they can come in and do their work, probably going to be somewhere between 6 and 9 months of digitisation. Once they've appointed somebody to do that piece of work. It's around they reckon they'll be doing about 2,000 images a day, so it gives you an indication of just how much material there is to add to the already fairly extensive resource we have online. And we of course hope that this will lead to additional clicks and therefore additional income for the service over time. Moving on, section 5, just to say, work on the William Barnes cataloguing project is going very well. The archivist Ruth Burton is doing a great job and is on schedule to complete in July of this year. And also just to touch on the Hardy project, which she completed prior to that. That's now fully completed, and we've also digitized the 11 notebooks that Hardy wrote, which were his key kind of creative source, if you like, where he wrote all his ideas and inspirations down. They've actually been digitized and are available via the catalogue, so we're going to promote that resource for people to view alongside the cataloguing material. Section 6, Sylvia Townsend Warner Archive, which is the third of the major literary collections we hold here. We're just about to start with Dorset Archives Trust a fundraiser to try and raise the 48,000 or so that we're going to need to employ someone to catalogue that collection over a 12-month period. We're hoping we're going to benefit from the recent upsurge in interest in Townsend Warner and her work. There was a statue unveiled in Dorchester not long ago, just before Christmas, and her stock seems to be rising. It's what I can make out in terms of the literary reputation. So thanks to Dorset Archives Trust, we're already readying ourselves to start that fundraiser. It will be a crowdfunder appeal with kind of small kind of digital gifts for those who wish to donate, and we'll also be seeking to raise funds through trusts and foundations to bring us up to that total. So we're hoping to achieve that by the sort of summer period, if at all possible. So no doubt you'll be hearing more about that in due course. Section 7, the work that we were undertaking in Bournemouth with the Jewish congregations, I'm really pleased to say that that's been going really well. A colleague and I met with representatives of the congregations in Bournemouth just last week. We'd had really interesting meetings with similar kind of projects that are taking place in Liverpool and Sheffield, where a wider community shout out, if you like, or call for archives have taken place, very successfully undertaken. And apart from the records of the congregations themselves, of which we've had about 70 boxes now transferred over here to the History Centre, the congregations themselves seem very interested in working with us to achieve a wider uptake in the collection of archival material. And particularly speaking, I was speaking with a BCP councillor, Lawrence Williams, who is himself of Jewish heritage, and he's keen to work with us on this. So we've formed a little working party, and I'm hoping as well to be applying to the Rothschild Foundation either later this year or early next, when we understand what sort of quantity of material we have to hand. Moving on to section 8, our Wessex Water Archives. I was just talking to the archivist working on this earlier, and just sort of saying how pertinent it was that this collection was actually now going to be made accessible, given that we've just had I think the wettest January on record. That work's going really well. There's been several hundred boxes of material that are being worked through, and over 1,000 maps. And within it, you might note within the material there's a whole range of different organisations represented. It's certainly not just Wessex Water. It's all those predecessor bodies and information coming to light. Some fascinating stuff, for example, relating to the bombing of Weymouth and Portland during the Second World War, which of course had an impact on the water supply. So hopefully that collection will be a great interest to researchers in the future. Section 9, just a quick update for you on what took place in the 2-week closure period prior to Christmas, when the staff here were given the time to essentially focus on the collections rather than opening the doors to the public, which is our normal function here. So a lot was achieved. There's a link to a blog there which you might wish to take a look at, which summarises it better than I could. All the things that were improve on and do better next year. So we've had a sort of heads together about how we can do things perhaps more efficiently next year. But still, I think there's testament to the staff working really hard to improve the state of the collections and organise ourselves better than we'd otherwise be able to do. Just under section 10, there are a little summary there of some of the interesting records that have come in since we last met. I'm particularly pleased to see the records of the Poole Harbour Commissioners come in from Poole Maritime Trust, deposited with us just a few weeks ago. Fascinating selection of records there dating back to 1838 and all the shipping traffic in and out of Poole Harbour, which we will be digitising for them in the future. I think that's everything I was going to talk or mention today, but obviously very happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Sam, for the report and the update. I've got a question hand raised from Councillor Andy Martin.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks for that, Sam. That's very very helpful. I just wanted to ask you about the work of the Jewish community. I know we've talked about this before. When is that likely to? Is there a sort of a point where it comes to fruition and there's some event which to launch the work that you've been doing, and I'm thinking specifically because we've got a history of the Jewish community exhibition coming up at the Russell Coates in October. It was postponed. You'll be aware, I'm sure, it was postponed from last October for various reasons. So I wondered whether it would tie in with that or could tie in with that.
Certainly, some of the people involved in the work we've been doing are one and the same, who've been involved in supporting that exhibition and its development. I think at this stage we're feeling our way along, just waiting to see what happens. In as much as we're putting some text together to explain what we're trying to achieve in terms of the collection of cultural, organisational, and business records from the community. I think it might go we're hoping it will obviously encourage others to come forward, but the time frame around that is fairly imprecise. So I think when we feel and more importantly when they feel that they've achieved what they can and we've got it into a state where it's ready to be sort of presented to the world, if you like, we would certainly like to do something with them. They seem very enthusiastic about this. It's really certainly very encouraging last week to hear the enthusiasm on their part about working jointly to try and bring more material to light, and some things like the Jewish hotels, the kosher hotels that came up in conversation. So there's lots of links there and contacts that we're finding, but I think it's going to take a little while to establish just how long it's going to take.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Councillor Scott Floric, please.
Hello, Councillor Scott Floric, Cork Mullen. Just to make the committee aware, I was invited to the Dorset History Centre on the 21st of February, and they're having some talks about Sylvia Townsend Warner. Is that correct?
That's right. Yes, we've got a talk about Townsend Warner coming up. Mark Chutter, who's the chair of the Harley Society, but also, more generally, sort of matters literary. He's going to be speaking on Townsend Warner in life. So please come along and enjoy if you're available.
Yes, I'm coming. I just want to make everyone aware.
Okay. Is there any further questions at this point? No. Okay, then. So we're going to move on to the recommendation. So we are asked today to confirm the 26-27 budget recommendations for the two funding councils from the 5th of November meeting at the Joint Archive Board. And part two of the recommendation is to note the service updates that have been presented today. Do I have a proposer, please, for those recommendations? Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Scott Floric proposing and Councillor Andy Martin to second. And again, unless anyone's going to indicate otherwise, I shall take that as that we all agree. Thank you very much. We now move on to the next item on the agenda, which I believe is urgent items, unless I've missed anything. There are no urgent items. Item 10 is exempt business, and again, there is no exempt business. So at 14:21, I close the meeting, and thank you everyone for your attendance.